I've always heard of lockdowns from friends in other schools or on the news, but for some reason I never imagined it happening at my school. See, I live in a small town where not really much happens. Everyone knows everyone. It's almost like one big extended family. Then reality came knocking one day at my school. It was a Friday, and we were all waiting on the sweet sound of freedom to come from the bell above the teacher's head. I was already imagining the pepperoni and cheese pizza from our local pizza place my mom would be bringing home, and the way I was planning to pwn all my friends in Call of Duty tonight. Even the teacher had finished his lesson and seemed even more antsy than us to leave the school as we watched the clock together. As the clock struck 3, Mr. Garrett was about to dismiss us. But then, as he was about to, we didn't hear the bell. Instead, we heard the dean over the loudspeaker saying that this is not a drill. All students must remain in class because we're going on lockdown. The dean tried to sound calm, but there was a tremble in his voice. By this time, Mr. Garrett still looked calm, but I noticed some of my classmates with worried looks on their faces. But really, how bad could it be in our little town? Nothing really happens, so maybe they're just overreacting. Mr. Garrett reassured me when he said, "Now calm down, students. This is just a routine He was cut off by the sound of manic screaming and loud bangs down the hall, almost as if someone was destroying the lockers one by one. Our teacher froze in place and put a finger on his lips instructing us to be quiet. By this time, the majority of the class, including myself, were in full panic mode. He just kept shouting, "Where is she? Where is she? Just give her up and I'll leave everyone else alone." He made his way to our classroom door and started banging on it. "Open up or I'll kill every single one of you in this room." Things got muffled after that, but it sounded like he was asking for one of the new teachers at the school. Some of the kids in my class started crying and covering their mouths to muffle the sound. The scariest thing was the look on Mr. Garrett's face. He was always calm, rarely showing emotion or fear, but the look on his face is what made us know how serious it really was. He tried to quietly get us to move to the back of the classroom and huddle together, then pow! The sound of a gunshot went off, creating a hole in the door and just barely missing the teacher at the front of the classroom. The lock gave way, and as the door began to open, Mr. Garrett let out a strange grunt and rammed his heavy metal desk full force into the door to barricade it. In frustration, 2 more bullets were put through the door, one hitting the teacher, and he went down. That's when we really started to panic. My classmates started crying, begging no, as the man continued to force his way in until he just stopped. The air was tense as we waited to see what would happen next. Then the dean came on the speaker to say that the lockdown will be lifted soon and that we should all try to stay calm. A bit too late for that, as Andy, the kid in our class with a heart condition, had fainted from the stress. It was later revealed that the bullet that hit Mr. Garrett only grazed him thankfully. He didn't fall because of it. He was using the desk as a shield. The man that was in our school was apparently an abusive ex-boyfriend of the new teacher that found her again. He wasn't very happy that she left him, or that she got a new job without telling him. Since then, he's been arrested, and as far as I or the other students know, he's behind bars. We never saw that new teacher again. I guess either she thought it wasn't safe for her, or the school decided they couldn't risk it, keeping her and having it happen again. Whatever happened, I hope she's okay, and that the man never caught up to her. This happened in my early years as a new teacher at the school. Even now I remember it vividly, in extreme detail. I was playing a game with my students, trying to find a fun way to get the lesson across, as I heard the alarm that symbolizes lockdown. It became very clear that this was not a drill. The school has a few alarms. During orientation period, we're told which means what and the procedures attached to them. Admittedly, as a new teacher, I slightly panicked and don't think I did a very good job calming down my students, or at least not as good a job as I could have. I told the students to move to the corner of the room farthest from the door and to stay as quiet as possible. I turned the lights off and went to stay in the same corner as them, trying to keep them as calm as possible while internally panicking. Then the lights in the hallway dimmed to the backup lights. To be honest, I almost pissed myself right there, because we talked about the last time this happened during orientation. The last time the lights had to be dimmed like that, a teacher was severely injured by some guy who snuck into the school with a weapon. We weren't given much detail, and no one was very jumpy to ask or tell, so we just skipped over the details. I got a little worried because this means it's most likely very serious, there was suddenly loud shouting on the other side of the door where the lockers are. It was too muffled to really hear, but the words, "I'll kill you," were very clear. I took a glance at my students. They began to look scared and confused. I mouthed, "It'll be okay, just stay quiet and it will be over soon." I tried to sound as sure as I could, but of course I was still internally panicking. There was a loud knock at the door, not with a hand, more like somebody being forcefully thrown at it. There were hits and grunts signifying a struggle on the other side. Then there was a hit on the door. It sounds like someone was pressed against the door and they were being hit repeatedly. After the sound of the struggle died down, I waited anxiously for some confirmation that it was safe. But then, one of them tried pulling the door, knocking on it hard, saying open up. Eventually, they started trying to kick the door in, saying open this damn door, now. I didn't know what to do, so I rushed at the door, pressing myself against it, trying to add some reinforcement. Then there was a wash of relief when I heard, "Freeze, police, get on the ground, now." From what I heard, there was a student that was expelled because of violent behavior and constant misconduct. He walked into the school and found the last teacher that reported him to the principal. The teacher suggested that he be expelled because he was a danger to everyone there. When the altercation started with the teacher, it was learned that he had a weapon, so that's when the lockdown was called. No further details were given to the staff, other than the teacher he attacked is okay. It seemed almost taboo to talk about that specific student. It's almost like they were completely wiped from the history of the school. The worst part is, this isn't even the strangest thing that's happened since I've been working there. I'll try to write more to show you exactly what I mean. My name is Alexis. I was an assistant teacher to a school for a short period of time. There was this lady I worked with, Mrs. Maxwell. She was getting on in years and they wanted me to shadow her for a few weeks before her retirement. From what I hear and saw, she was one of those 1 in a million teachers that was incredibly good at what she did. All of her students seemed sad that she was leaving. Never once did I hear a bad thing said about her, and I could see why. She was always so positive when she walked into any room, even while struggling to walk on her bad knee with a cane. Though I loved watching her teach, I was glad she was going to be getting some rest. One day, she asked me to go for some extra textbooks for the class. This was one of my regular jobs, so it became kind of routine. They would be in the school basement. Luckily, I've never really been afraid of spaces like this. I pushed open the heavy metal door, journeyed down the creaky old metal stairs trying to avoid the rusty walls. I picked up the 10 books she wanted and was about to go back upstairs when I heard something muffled from the speakers. Immediately, I heard several pings from my phone. Anyone that has my number knows the hours I work and not to text me, so I assumed it was some type of emergency. So I decided to look at it before going back to work. One was from school and the others were from Mrs. Maxwell asking me where I was and that we were on lockdown, so I should try to find a safe place to stay if I can't make it back to the classroom. She warned me that someone entered the school and was possibly armed and dangerous. I wasn't sure what to do. This didn't exactly get covered in basic training. I decided not to leave until she or someone else texted me to tell me that it's okay to move around. I was sitting down and waiting, so I started playing games on my phone to pass the time with the sound off. Just then, I heard the door being pushed, so I turned off my phone so the light wouldn't give me away until I knew who was there. I hadn't gotten a text, so no one should be moving around right now. My heart started beating faster as the person ran down the stairs and slipped on the third to last step. The step was rusted out, so if you didn't know about it, then it could bend deeper than the others, and there was a chunk missing from it. It was easy to slip on. The person whispered, "Shit," under their breath. Clearly, this person was not supposed to be here. I knew about the step from the very first week working here. Everyone knew about it. All kinds of thoughts started running through my mind. I slowly tried to make my way to one of the pillars and tried to hide behind it to make myself a little harder to find. The man began pacing back and forth in a panic and then tried to find the light switch. He moved closer to me and my heart started to beat out of my chest. My breath stopped as I could almost feel his body heat. Then he found me, grabbed me by the arm and threw me on the ground asking who I was, and I just kept begging him not to kill me. "I'm just an assistant." He held a knife to my neck and pressed it into my skin as tears ran down my face. He said he doesn't want to kill anyone, he just needs to get out of here. There was no other way out, but I couldn't let him know that. I fibbed and said there's an exit down that way that leads to the back of the school. As soon as he let me go and said thanks, I ran back upstairs and ran down the hall screaming before he could figure out my bluff. Police officers ran past me down the basement. I collapsed on the floor trying to catch my breath. A few minutes later, The man was dragged out of the school as I saw his face. I learned that he was on the run for a murder. Who he killed, when and why, were never revealed to us by the police. I still teach there to this day, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit more hesitant going down that basement by myself. I do also fear that one day the man might return, though many people, including the police, have been trying to convince me otherwise. Funny enough, Mrs. Maxwell and I were talking recently, and she secretly hoped that I quit after that, because she never forgives herself for putting my life in danger like that. As sweet as ever, and I just hope that I can fill the massive shoes that she's left for me.